I will tell my younger self as well to keep going. There will be detours, failures, just unmet expectations, but to keep trusting that vision. That's why I say it's so important to know that better days are there, to keep going no matter what.
Welcome to the EQ Gangster podcast, where you will learn practical tools to grow your mental and emotional health and intelligence to be the best version of yourself, both at work and at home. It is real, raw, and transformational. The journey of emotional growth isn't easy, but it's worth it. I believe in you. This episode is sponsored by Arrowhead Leadership Consulting. What are your organization's biggest pain points right now? Low EQ leaders, weak managers, toxic culture, high turnover, low engagement, leader development, lagging behind company growth, no company career path. Let us know if your organization needs leadership coaching, workshops, training, or keynotes. Visit arrowhead-leadership.com for more details. Arrowhead-leadership.com. EQ Gangsters, I am so excited to introduce our guest for today. She has an amazing background. She is a rock star. She runs a global luxury leather company brand for over 25 years, hundreds of employees, and has overcome a tremendous amount. Her story is just incredible. I'm so excited for her to share her story. She's an author. She's got an amazing book, Pioneers, 8 Principles of Business Longevity from Immigrant Entrepreneurs. And just buckle up, take notes. It's so great meeting you. Merhaba.
Merhaba, thank you for inviting me. What an introduction. I have to live up to it now.
you already have, just what you've been through. So Neri, share with us your how did you, like, as early as you're willing to start, how did you go from an immigrant and refugee to now leading a global luxury brand?
Sure, I can try to explain it maybe a little bit briefly too, because it's a very long story. It has so many details to it. But for your listeners who may not know, I was born in 1978 in communist Bulgaria. And in 1980s, and this was communism, so the communist government at the time, they decided to carry out an ethnic assimilation campaign against minorities, particularly Turkish minorities living in Bulgaria, and they called the campaign "There Are No Turks in Bulgaria." So that meant our names were changed, forcibly changed. They will come to your home, forcibly take you, and you have to change your name. So you cannot have a name that sounds remotely Turkish. And my father, especially my family, they were very proud of their heritage. And I think they took it very personally, because someone comes to you and wants to take your name away and tells you you are not allowed to speak in your language, and you are no longer allowed to practice your culture or religion. So for several months and up to a year, we actually ran away from the Gestapo, from the soldiers who were breaking into our homes, into our streets. Many people were imprisoned, killed during those protests and running away. And eventually our names were, of course, all of our names were changed, because you go to school and, some kids have Turkish names, some have Bulgarians, and also the teachers, there was a strict rule where the teachers have to inform the Communist Party and tell them these kids' names are not changed. And it's awful. It is absolutely awful.
Neri,
Yes.
how old were you during that time when you're literally on the run? How old were you?
I was exactly 7, 8, 9 years, like 7, 8 years old.
What was that like? I cannot imagine. I have a daughter, I cannot imagine being on the run with my family when my daughter's 7, 8, 9 years old. What was going through your head as a 7, 8, 9 year old emotionally? What were you thinking about? What were you feeling?
So we were not on the run for long extended periods of time because the Gestapo, the police will come for a specific, let's say on Sunday. And you will know my father had Bulgarian police officers as friends. So this nuance is very important. This is about the communist dictator of Bulgaria at the time. It has nothing to do with people who are Bulgarian, who live in Bulgaria, and they wanted to protect us. Yes, this is a very important point I want to make. And they would say, oh, they are going to have a bus stop on Sunday night, so hide. And that will be one way. And sometimes when we didn't know, my dad actually held my mom's hand and she threw herself down from the third floor onto blocks of wood. And then he jumped after us and we ran to my uncle's hut in the wood. And I remember those moments, but for me, it's not so much of a memory. It's more like this ongoing. I always say my first memory is shame because as a 7, 8, 9 year old, 10, 11 year old, I knew around that time, especially, that something is wrong with me. And I internalized it at the time. And it took years of therapy to be able to and heal that part. And still, I'm not going to say it's fully healed. The scars are always there. But this feeling of I have to be ashamed of my culture, I have to be ashamed of who I am, stayed with me. And then
And
yes,
no, no, no. Go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead.
and then in you know I think that's also why even on those in during those early years I was very much focused on getting a good education because I thought that's the only thing I can control. I can control how well I do at school. And I thought education is going to um, I guess it was more about control, to be honest, if I am able to give you the most honest answer here, because it was with all the chaos and change and the feeling, this negative feeling of shame that I felt very deeply inside me. Education and the books I used to read all the time, and I would read the classics, Dostoevsky, Tolstoy, Russian classics, Turgenev, to the point where the librarian had to talk to my parents and say, "Are you aware your daughter is taking out these books?" Like, because it allowed me to escape. It wasn't, nobody was telling me I have to read them, but it was my way of escaping the world I lived in. Education was very similar.
Well, another that's awesome. That's amazing. And another story that I heard when I was doing my homework on you and reading and researching about you, you had another fascinating let's see, I don't know if coping mechanism is the right way to say it, but you shared in one of your other interviews how you 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 would create these worlds that you had never seen before as like did that come from all your reading? Like how did you know to do that? How did you do that?
Possibly, because I did when I was reading. That's very interesting. You are bringing that up because when I was reading, I will escape into these worlds. I will be in the world that Dostoevsky created. I will be in the world that Balzac created. I wasn't in Asenovgrad in Bulgaria. I wasn't an ethnic minority who felt shame. So that was initially, I think, those are my early years. And then at the age of 11, in June of 1989, the communist dictator, I will call him, Todor Zhivkov, came on TV. So we only have one national TV and national channel, of course. You don't have you don't have brands, you don't have these multiple channels. You have only one newspaper. And he came on TV and he, our mighty leader is going to make an announcement. Everyone has to watch. And he basically said, the Turks, anyone who feels Turkish needs to leave, and the border will be open from this time to this time, and you have to leave. And our neighbors, I was 11, as I'm telling you. It was initially, I thought this is a good thing, the fact that we will have to leave. I don't know yet when, in the next month or so maybe, but I thought, because of my own family and the fact that we took our names being changed and living within this assimilate this I don't know, it's almost like segregation, because we didn't even have the chance to go to good schools, or we lived next to the Roma gypsies, and they are also ethnic minorities. So the Turkish ethnic minorities and Roma gypsies tend to live together. You don't really get to live where there are nice houses and nice apartment blocks provided by the communist government, because we don't belong to that. So I thought, and I write about this in the book, my grandmother growing up will say to me, Turkey is, she will describe this magical land. She will say, in Istanbul, the faucets are golden, the streets are made of marble. She was lying. The shock will hit me, of course, in June of 1989, together with 360,000 Bulgarians of Turkish ethnicity. We were only allowed to take what we can carry, which at that time were 2 suitcases. And my 9-year-old brother, myself at the age of 11, my mom and my dad, we left home. We left our family behind, my grandparents, cousins, the streets I grew up in, everyone we knew. So we initially were set to stay at a refugee camp. We had absolutely no money. You don't even know where to go. It was absolute mayhem all around me. And I remember that chaos, and I talk about it in my other interviews as well. My father running to the border. Once we saw the Turkish border, running and screaming. Those screams, I will never forget them. And throwing himself on the ground and started to kiss the ground, because to him it's the motherland soil. And my mother, who was very unhappy because life as she knew just ended. And it was in that moment I made a decision that I have to get a good education, no matter what I do. And I really very much focused on that. And despite us not having money, eventually my parents will find any jobs that they could do. We moved into a rental, tiny apartment that didn't have any heating. Many nights we went to bed hungry because we couldn't even afford to buy bread. And my brother, he was 9 years old. One night, he took some clothes from the house, a cassette player that my parents, I don't know why, but my mom put that in the suitcase. We had a cassette player, no cassette, but just a cassette player. And this is 1989, 1990 at the time. He basically went to the grocers and exchanged it for food, cheese, bread, pasta, just anything that they would give him in exchange of that cassette player. I don't want to get emotional, but wow, you really brought up all these. And that evening when he left home, it was about 8, 9 o'clock. And he didn't come home till midnight. We were extremely worried, thinking something, he's 9, thinking something happened to him. And eventually, around close to midnight, he showed up from the end of the street with 2 bags of groceries. So the streets were not paved with marble, and the faucets were not golden. And there is Ellis Island. There is a famous quote on Ellis Island. I'm paraphrasing, I expected streets to be made of gold. Not only were they not made of gold, but they were not even paved. And I was expected to be the one to pave them, to fix them. So I find it fascinating how years later, the immigrant story is more or less the same.
Neri, wow.
I didn't expect to get emotional on a podcast, but here we go.
No, I'm grateful. Thank you, Neri. Thank you. I cannot, I mean, incredible what you guys have had to endure, what your family and obviously many other families, right,
Many,
had
many.
thousands, tens of thousands have had to endure, and how you have turned, all of that experience to an amazing life, and not just for you and your family, but also for the hundreds of folks that work in your company, in your organization. And now, you're a professor, you've done, you continue to do amazing things. How did you take all of that, and I would say trauma, all that
Mm-hmm.
trauma, Neri, how did you take all that trauma and navigate through all the heaviness of that trauma and turn it into what you've created, this amazing life of blessing and impact for yourself and others? How did you do that? What did that journey look like of healing and growth?
Sure, I can try to articulate it. I think it starts with vision. This is very, very important because, as I said to you, I had a very clear vision. I mean, I'm 11 years old. My vision was I need to get a good education. And I was very, very focused on that. And despite all the challenges, the challenging environment, going to bed hungry, not having the right notebooks, the right being bullied at school. Almost like I know they are there, but I try to shut them out because I have a vision, and that vision is pulled me forward. It was just, and this is another one is I don't know if it's I should call it determination or ambition, because I am determined, and I think today the word ambition has a negative connotation, but I think it's very much linked to resilience, because you find yourself being challenged, and let's say you have a failure, something doesn't go the way you expected it to go, but you are determined and you have ambition and you have vision that you are going to get back up. That's why I think today we will talk about resilience, we will talk about success, but yet at the same instance when we talk about ambition, I've noticed people think it has some negative connotation, but this is also important. I was certainly ambitious and I was determined. I was ambitious when I would take a math exam because I wanted to get an A so I can be a valedictorian and get the best grade so I can go to university. So this is, I think it's part of the recipe. You have to have it. And it's important. I think it's important. And the self-belief comes from the vision. You have to trust your crazy idea. You have to have that vision. So for us, at the age of my father, so another important element here, I will never say I have done all of this myself, because it's not going to be true. It's only part of the truth. It was my family. Just like when we immigrated together, we had to face these challenging times and days together. We also built the business together. We built the life together as well. So it's this togetherness, and it doesn't mean we are the perfect family who doesn't fight, who doesn't argue. In fact, we do a lot, but it's Turkish after all. We are passionate and we love our drama, but there is sticking together. We stick together. We stuck together. My father, and I will to your listeners, I want to say how the business happened, because it just didn't happen overnight. It was a very much step-by-step process that took years, if I'm completely honest. So my father in 19 shortly after we immigrated, the Berlin Wall fell down. And we speak Russian, we grew up in communism, so culturally, it's quite close to us culturally, because we speak the language. And many of the people who lived in communism, after communism ended, started to travel to neighboring countries, and they would try to look for opportunities for entrepreneurship, because all the institutions in communist countries fell. There is no more banks, there is nothing. So they are also trying to make a living. It's as if suddenly we are all on the same boat. Like, we are immigrants, but in some ways they are also becoming immigrants. Because for me, immigration is not just changing geographies, it's also metaphorically, you can be an immigrant when you lose a job and you have to start anew as well. Or you become a parent, you were single and now you are, it's also like you live in a new country. So
That's amazing. So how did that business journey happen over years? What was that process like?
sure. And in my father had kept a business card of a Turkish person who we met on the beach in Bulgaria in 19, maybe 3 years ago. And he gave his business card to my dad and said, "This is, if you are ever in Turkey by some miracle, here is my business card." My dad kept it for years, took it with himself when we were immigrating. And of course, he didn't contact him directly, but the in around 1992, when all these Russian former Soviet republic, like Ukrainian, from Azerbaijan, from Georgia, people are all coming to Turkey, and they are buying whatever they could, like t-shirts, leather wallets, shoes, and bringing it all back to their country, selling it on the street markets, and then coming back again. And this at the time was called the luggage trade. And it made up the largest part of the Turkish economy, because the numbers were so huge, so huge. And my father went to the Turkish guy and said, "I don't want to work in your factory, but I have a proposal for you. I would like to sell your products in these former Soviet countries, because I know there is a need. There is no brands there at the moment. Communism just ended. There is nothing. And I would like to make commission from whatever I'm selling." I'm simplifying the story, of course, and shortening it. And that's how my parents opened a tiny little shop. It wasn't even a shop. It was in an old apartment. Can you hear me? Yes. It was not a shop. It was an old apartment on the third floor. So it's like, it's a miracle they were even able to sell anything, but we put up a giant sign and we said, we wrote what we are selling: belts, wallets, and so on, jeans, t-shirts. And my father also, we wrote a sign that said, in different languages, in Russian, Ukrainian, Romanian, in different languages, please come in for a homeland cup of coffee. It wasn't come and buy products from us. And literally, people will come in and we will talk about our shared experience of having lived in communism. We will talk about life post-communism. And it was this bond that we created with our customers. And this is how the business actually started. And then I was at the time 15, 16 when I started to take the Turkish leather producers to Italy. My dad will come as well. These trade fairs are huge. They are, at the time it was in Bologna, and that's when I discovered where the top producers of leather skins are, how it all works, and also who are the very best ones. Today, some of these companies are owned by Chanel, by LVMH, by Kering. They became incredibly, incredibly famous. But at the time, they were also still, family owned, still growing, but doing business with great integrity. So age 18, I went to University of Miami to study business. Of course, in the back of my mind, I am always thinking about my parents, my family who is in Istanbul. And I graduated in 2.5 years. But towards the end of my degree, I wrote a business plan for Neri, for the business that you see today. At the time, we didn't have our own brand. And I graduated and went back to Turkey, decided to return, and told my parents, here is an idea. Instead of making just commission out of the company, why don't we create our own brand? And the idea was, we are going to the Italian producers. They had these, today it's called sustainability, but at the time they will either discard unused leather skins that have a little defect or are no longer in trend, that they cannot produce or use anymore. And the idea was, can we buy it from you? And in most cases, they gave it to us for free. But it was very, very cheap to get it. And we didn't make a very big collection, but we created wallets, mobile phone cases. At the time, Nokia was really popular and people were carrying their products in. And another one was belts, because manufacturers and craftsmen were also immigrants like us in Turkey, that my father met and built these relationships with. So that's how the business started. And we approached because when he was selling the products, of course, he built a very strong network of distributors in former communist countries, Central Asia, Russia, Ukraine. So that's how we basically started our own business.
So that is such an amazing story, Neri. So I mean, truly, it's so neat hearing you tell it, because truly it is a family business. Like, everyone has contributed to
Yes.
different pieces of the puzzle. What what has been for you the most challenging aspect or dynamic of being an entrepreneur, would you say?
I think the most challenging is the uncertainty because there's a lot of ups and downs, and that's just the reality of being an entrepreneur. I think personally for me has been this push and pull between being responsible and being part of my family and versus living what I thought is my truth, my life. And that has been the case for me because I didn't want to stay and live in Turkey. I've always been very much interested in getting a higher education and didn't want to simply, it wouldn't satisfy me just to say I graduated from University of Miami and now we are building our family business in Istanbul. That wouldn't make me happy. However, because of my culture and my background, and maybe because of my personality as well, I was very much had felt this obligation to stay, to keep building, to keep being together until I was about the age of 35, when I finally said, I realized that this is not what I want to do only. And I'm going to, I want to take a step back from the family business. I will always support you. I will always be here. But I had received my PhD from Cambridge at the time, and I certainly have this pull towards academia, towards writing, speaking, advising, but not, and I think, as I said, it was more the realization that I was living my life for someone else and having the obligation to family. And this took a lot more courage than starting a business, let me tell you, to, to say, this is what I want.
Wow. I mean, I can only imagine how hard that was, especially, just growing up how you did in that environment where you had to depend on family, and your relationship with your family is I mean, I would say this may be, this may upset some folks that may be listening, but I would say the relationship that you developed with your family was 10x stronger or tighter or deeper than most families, because most families have never been through what you've been through, right? As a family. And so, and the reality is adversity can deepen relationships, and you guys went through a tremendous amount of adversity together. And so I can only imagine how hard that was to say, hey, family, like, I'm still part of the family and I still love you guys, but I'm going to go right instead of left or whatever, right? And
Yeah.
so that I can only imagine how hard that was for all of you, right? Not just you, but
Mm-hmm.
for the whole family. Okay, I've got another question, Neri. You are truly a global citizen, right? You have been just experienced so many different. I mean, I would argue in your young age, you've lived 5 lifetimes, right? Right. And so, what have you learned about people being a global citizen?
Oh, very interesting question. I have learned that at the very heart, in the very heart of the things, let's say, people are kind. And I know right now, for example, like sometimes I will hear there's a lot of hatred, there's a lot of complexity happening in the world, division. But when I'm one on one, and I think everyone, not everyone, but most people are very kind. That's what I heard, and people want to be kind.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah. I and I think you made a great point that one-on-one, right? It's funny and not funny, but how the power of groupthink,
Mm-hmm.
how that can just it can make humans do some of the most evil things, right? And
Abso-
so and whereas
Absolutely.
but if you take that person one-on-one, they would never do something like that, right? Like,
Exactly. That's what I'm trying to say. You articulated it much better than I did, but it's exactly what I'm trying to say. In a group, you will see, for example, because I write about immigration and I'm an immigrant, you will have immigrants are this, immigrants are bad, immigrants are that, but one on one, if you sit down with the person, you will find out that that person doesn't think like that. And the more you talk to him or her, it's very different than what the persons would say online, especially if there is a username attached to it, and he hides behind a certain online profile.
right. That's right. Okay, what oh, I could speak to you for hours, Neri. For
Thank you.
hours.
And
You
you
are so fascinating.
Thank you. Thank you very likewise. I actually didn't imagine we will be having such a natural conversation. You are really good too. You know what you reminded me just now when I said kind. When I got to University of Miami, and I spent there about a semester, more than a semester, and then I had a financial aid and I was working. They allow you to work after a certain time. $7 an hour I was tutoring. But I also decided I'm going to leave the campus. You are also encouraged to do that. And this is going to sound unbelievably dangerous and crazy, but at the time, this is before internet, or at least not the way it is now. I I basically found an ad of a woman who in a newspaper who was willing renting a couch in her apartment on Miami Beach. And maybe I will say it, maybe she will be one of the listeners. Her name was Jean Marie Dereau at the time, her last name. And she basically opened up her apartment to me and she let me stay on her couch for near 6 months, 7 months. And she's the first one to take me to go shopping. She took me to MAC. It's the first person who introduced me to makeup. And that's why I say people in their heart are very kind. And I've been very grateful to her. Sometimes I will try to find her online, but it hasn't been possible.
Wow. Wow. What an impactful and what a blessing that that you crossed paths with her because for that for her to be able to the first impressions leave a lasting impression, and for her to be able to take you in and introduce you to some of your first moments, um
Yes,
such a powerful, and that it was, and that she was kind and good to you. What a
yes,
blessing, what a blessing.
absolutely, absolutely.
That's amazing. Okay, so one more question, Neri. One more question. I mean, I've got thousands of more, but for the time, for now, how? Okay, what with your experience as a global citizen, with all the challenges that you've been through, and from immigrant and refugee and author and PhD and successful entrepreneur, all these amazing things you've done with your life, what advice would you give to someone who wants to grow up and be like you, to be successful and accomplish their dreams, whatever that means for them? What advice would you share?
Well, I guess I will, if I will, because this is something I will tell my younger self as well. to keep going. There will be detours, failures, just unmet expectations, but to keep trusting that vision. That's why I say it's so important to know that better days are there, to keep going no matter what.
And that that advice, I feel like it means a lot coming from you based on what you've been through. Right? It's one thing for me to say it, but I haven't been through what you've been through. So for what you've been through, that carries a lot of weight. So thank you for sharing. That's very powerful. Now, in the last few minutes here, Neri, can you tell us about your book, your website, your resources? How do we connect with you and stay in touch, or how do we find you? How do we follow you? How do we connect with you?
Sure. So I'm quite active on LinkedIn. My name is Neri Sallaman. You can find me there. I also have an Instagram account and it's prof.neri. You can find me there as well. So LinkedIn and Instagram. I am currently building a new website, which I will share on LinkedIn, and it's coming out very, very soon. But it will be Neri Speaks, www.nerispeaks.com. My book Pioneers, 8 Principles of Business Longevity from Immigrant Entrepreneurs, is for people who want to not just build businesses of impact and longevity, but it carries a lot of life lessons in it. Many of the readers who already have read the book, it was out on May 6th, they have been surprised, and I've been saying that it's not your regular, typical, boring business book. I tried to write a book that will read like a novel. So I take the reader by the hand and they are immersed in the story of the founder of Duolingo, Luis Bonan, who grew up in Guatemala. They will find out about the story of Hamdi Ulukaya, the founder of Chobani, the founder of Moderna, of PayPal, WhatsApp. Some of the most impactful companies are founded by immigrants. Actually, the reason why I wrote the book is because nearly 50% of Fortune 500 companies are founded by immigrants. That's an astonishing number. And unfortunately, today there is such a negative rhetoric when it comes to immigration and immigrants that we tend to miss what immigrants have to offer. And they are not people to be pitied or to be scared of. So my book was written with that in mind, to show the fact that there are lessons here to be learned that you can apply to your business, but you can also apply to your life. And I think they will love reading the book. That's what I can say, and they can find it anywhere books are sold.
Thank you, Neri, for not just your time today, and I'm very grateful for your time today, but thank you for what you've been through and how you have and what you've done with your life, that you could be a gift to me and to the audience and to all the people that you impact with your story. I'm very grateful, Neri. Thank you so much
Likewise.
for sharing today.
And thank you for your openness and space. This word space is very important. You've brought this beautiful space where I can be myself, and I think I've shared things that also surprised me. So I really appreciate it.